Chapter 68. Kara. As soon as Blue leaves in Shauna's carriage, I'm alone in the house. It's oddly quiet as I walk back inside. I don't remember it being this quiet or still in the years before I got Blue, but now I see his absence clearly etched into my existence. I let myself slouch, drag my feet, and try my damnedest not to acknowledge how dead I feel. There's no one here to judge. I shouldn't have to care. And yet, I still feel like I'm betraying something. Maybe it's just a sense of self that I've created. The plates and cups go into the sink as I try to summon up the will to do some cleaning. The tea. Stars, the tea. I shouldn't let Blue handle that anymore. At least not what he's affectionately referring to as my favorite blend. It's not hard to use the same little utility spells again, moving the bowls and cups. Nothing here weighs even close to the spell's upper limit, though it does leave me frustrated. I want to get better. I need to get better. I'm not used to being dependent on my magic. It's not my style to use my magic rather than my hands. I wasn't lying. There's tons of stuff to get done around the house. There are plenty of things that I've been slacking on since the semester started. Just normal stuff around the house. Candles to replace and pipes to check. Even if it doesn't usually snow around here, it does get cold enough to do damage. But that's stuff for someone functional. It's not the worst weather we've had, but I'm doing worse than I ever have. Winter isn't usually a good time for me. There's a lack of the natural ambient magic that flows freely in the other seasons. And the plants. The earth is less talkative. I always get a little sluggish, but this is something so much more than that. I wonder if it's something to do with the new casting, some kind of side effect that I overlooked, or if I'm just getting sick. Either way, school isn't even there to distract me anymore. With nothing else to do, it's hard to stay motivated, or even just stay awake enough to clean the house. I throw the pastries into some boxes and do my best to wipe down the kitchen without letting my eyes fall shut. There's a pain in my head, but I'm worried that if I take anything for it, there's no chance I would be able to stay awake. My impromptu baking session seems to have accomplished something, at least. I haven't been paying attention to the contents of my icebox recently, and now I know I need to go get groceries. Well, I suppose I have time for that now. Time for grocery shopping and baking and those more time-consuming recipes that I was saving for semester break after quals. The walk into town isn't bad. Gloves aren't out of the ordinary at this time of year, and the puffy ones have the added benefit of providing some extra room. My spell isn't perfectly precise, and while it's incredibly helpful with mundane things, I'm coming to realize that the spell isn't as good at maneuvering objects when I try to make it seem like I'm holding them. I keep bumping the things into the sensitive skin of my hands, aggravating the wounds. It's more helpful when I control something from across the room. Either way, it's nice to get out and see people going about their day. I usually don't have too much free time at normal business hours, so it's rare for me to see so many people. Nafe's general store is busy, but there's no chance of that calming down anytime soon, and I'm too far a walk from any other big store. I try to shake off the way my headache burns behind my eyes as I walk in. I need groceries. It'll be just a short trip, and then I can bake and cook all kinds of difficult, time-consuming recipes. I wonder how Blue would like them. I try not to wonder too hard how Blue's doing at school. The place isn't the best for him, and at the worst, it's not entirely safe. But I trust Shauna. Plus, Ande's a pretty well-respected breed. That will keep them out of trouble. Won't it? It's all I can do to push the thought of it out of my mind and get some fish that I can prepare for dinner. It's not my favorite, especially given how tasteless this stuff is as opposed to the fresh-caught stock from Paralia. But Blue likes it. He should have something he likes for dinner tonight, especially given how brave he was about going to school without me. The price of flour has gone up. Not just that, but a few other staples as well. I bite the inside of my cheek as I remind myself that's to be expected, given the troubles we're facing abroad. My experiments have yet to yield anything that would work, other than a 2-to-1 mixture of fertile soils, but that's just as realistic as praying for one of those miracles of old. It's not a viable option. And direct magical interference on blighted soil only harms the caster. No, the solution has to come from somewhere else. It has to either be an indirect magical effect, or something that can be applied to the land. Kara! I nearly jump out of my skin when I hear my name called. I spin around, and it's not too hard to identify the person who yelled my name. Oh, hello! I try to smile for Jati. He's harmless, after all, and I can't imagine him being up to something nefarious, though it is often those that don't know they're causing trouble that are able to wreak the most havoc. It's been a long time since I've seen my nosy neighbor, but it's also been a while since I last had to make a set of deliveries. Winter is my dead season. My neighbors respect that, but they haven't had to deal with me dropping off the map like I did for school. I'm a little touched. He seems so happy to see me. You didn't bring your cute little kitty like last time? He questions with a slight pout before actively looking around for Blue. I have to hold back a laugh when he peeks behind my shoulder. Blue may have tried to hide behind me in the past, but there's not so large a size difference between us that he could get away with that. No, I told him to stay home. I answer plainly, waving my hand in what I hope is a placating gesture. I feel terribly out of practice at small talk. It's just so odd seeing you without him. You two are usually joined at the hip. He shrugs, giving up his search. Stars, are we? I suppose there aren't really any times where we've had to be apart. We like each other's company. Is it really that shocking that we should spend so much time together? Yes, well, there were some things he needed to attend to. I try to explain without going into too much detail. Jati does not need to know the intricacies of how fucked I am. He's too much of a blabbermouth anyways. He'd let the whole city know before sundown. He wouldn't understand the delicate place I'm in with the disciplinary committee, or even the rules that I was breaking with the new mode of casting. He'd just spread word around without context. I hope you aren't being too hard on him. That cute little thing makes such a dedicated pet. He needs you to play gently with him. He chides. Then his thoughts seem to turn to something else, and his expression darkens. Nothing like the pet my sister adopted a while back. Damn thing cries all the time. Can't even pour tea without making a mess. He gives an annoyed huff as he picks up some fabric softener. Right. He finds Blue cute, but his opinions aren't all that different from the rest of the world. He sees Blue as more of an animal than an intelligent creature. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I try to respond in some way that wouldn't be considered an insult. Anything that isn't punching him in the face, really. I'm sure she'd like to get her pet just as sweet as yours. Do you have any tips for her? He asks, the genuinely excited smile on his face making it all the more difficult not to shift gears and actually punch him. Stars. Why? Why are you asking me your horrible questions? Well, really there's always going to be an adjustment period when someone new comes into the house. It would probably be best to give them a lot of space and very clear instructions on your expectations for them. I flounder a bit, trying to find some other bit of advice that might help both his sister and her unfortunate addition. Even so, it might take time, so just let her know not to give up. It's very rewarding in the end. I finish lamely, but Jati seems to take it in stride. Ah, yes, I'll let her know. That's almost the same advice as Carmine's. He snickers, and though I wish I could walk away from this, my curiosity gets the better of me. Carmine? I ask, appealing to Jati's inherent desire to gossip. Our new addition to the neighborhood. You know how the Relly family moved out a while ago? Well, the house finally sold, he says, instantly taking to the question I've asked. The Relly family. Stars, I haven't seen them in months. All I really know about them is that they didn't want to be on my delivery route. Their house is on a different street, so it's no wonder I didn't see the new people move in. New neighbors! That's so exciting! I'll have to bring him something later. I say, more to myself than anything, but Jati only sees it as an invitation. It is very exciting. He has a pet of his own, you know. Maybe you should go and get your Blue a friend, he rambles, continuing until I've walked him back to his door and immediately eject myself from this unfortunate social situation. It's only a few doors down from my house, but I feel like I need to sit down on the fucking lawn before I collapse. I feel like my boots are weighted as I trudge the last few steps back home, when a rapid flash of movement catches my attention. There's something darting around the side of the house. Rounded ears, but no fur at their tail. A rat familiar? I want to go say hi, but I don't want to freak them out. If it's a stray, then they probably have enough distrust of me as it is. I can give them time to get adjusted. I've got some stuff to do anyway. I have to go say hello to the new neighbor. I could go down to the house with a welcome bag of pastries. That would buy some time for this new... Oh, stars, the new neighbor has a pet. Blue could smell the presence of the strays that came through the area. I wonder if that's a skill that they all share. If the new neighbor just moved in, it makes sense that their pet might check up on the other smells in the neighborhood. It makes me all the more excited to meet this new neighbor. If he gave the same advice to Jati that I did, maybe he shares my views on familiars. Or maybe it's the fact that he doesn't have to use his pet as a familiar that has made him more open to the ideas. He doesn't have to focus on their abilities or usefulness in spellcraft, so perhaps that's what made him less harsh. Either way, I have to meet him to figure it out. The renewed energy has me nearly sprinting into the house. The pastries are already in containers, so I don't waste any time grabbing them before I head out. The Relly's house is a gray brick building with a dark tile roof. Its black window shutters are something of an oddity on its block. Most of the neighbors have variations of red, but the Relly family were an odd bunch even before they packed up and left. The moving boxes outside do seem to support Jati's point that someone new has moved in, though. The knocker's cast iron and made up to look like some fearsome bird. I never had to look that closely at it before, but I can't help examining it as I wait for someone to answer. Hello, I'm sorry, did you need something? The man that comes to the door calls distractedly. He isn't what I was expecting, though I can't say I was expecting all that much. He looks to be in his late 30s, his hair a bright, fiery red that I have a hard time seeing as natural. The longest bits would only brush his jaw if they weren't pinned up as they are. It's no artful design, just something that was probably meant to keep it out of his way while he was unpacking. Though he's obviously no career soldier, he does seem to have some muscle. He's got personable laugh lines around his eyes that make me think he's a good deal more charming than his current visage allows him to present. Though his eyes look something like dull amber, I can almost feel them cutting through me with a harshness I wasn't expecting, before he seems to think better of it and his gaze softens. Not at all, I say, trying to regain some of the momentum that brought me to his door. Right, I was introducing myself to a new neighbor. My name is Kara, and I'm here welcoming you to the neighborhood. Kara, he says, testing the name on his tongue consideringly. Suddenly he seems to make a connection in his mind. You're the one with the cat! I see rumors spread fast. I have the cat, yes, and I think I saw your pet over by my house already. I smile up at him, but whatever friendliness he seems to have towards me immediately drains from his eyes. Jaja! He calls, tone sharp. I flinch back, my mind halfway through 14 languages, trying to translate that into a curse that I know, when I notice the figure that comes to stand behind him. The pet that he's called for is a chipmunk. The unmistakable lines in their hair are too prominent for me not to notice. Their soft, rounded ears look a little like what I had seen dart into my yard, but their tail is fluffy. Yes, master? They chirp, looking confused to be called to the door with a stranger. Did you go out? I told you we'd walk the neighborhood together. It can be dangerous if you go out alone. His chiding is gentle, though no less stern. Master, I didn't go out. You said to unpack, so I was in the... They chitter, pointing vaguely further back into the house. Jaja, apologize to this man this instant. He saw you, and I will not have you lying. he interrupts, his voice tight with anger and disappointment. The chipmunk, Zsa-Zsa, just shrinks in on themselves. Actually, I try to speak up, but my voice dies in my throat as suddenly all eyes are on me. I am so sorry. I saw something else, it seems. Whoever it was certainly was not as adorable as your Zsa-Zsa. I just thought, well, no one else has a pet, so I assumed it was the new guy who just moved in. It was probably a stray. I try to explain, diffusing the tense situation that I seem to have caused. Oh, a stray? I guess I should tell the trappers to be on guard in this area. He says it more to himself than anything else, but I still try to chime back in. You don't have to go through so much trouble. I try to say it without letting my voice waver. And I also try not to think too hard about how Thana and all his friends are going to start having trouble if the neighborhood is crawling with trappers. It's really no trouble. It's my duty. I used to work with them, but now I just inspect the animal shelter facilities. He answers with a dismissive wave of his hand. Oh, that seems like a cool job. I try to engage him. It's tough, but I like making sure that unsafe facilities are shut down. Plus, it lets me work with all kinds of interesting people. It's how I found Zsa-Zsa. I adopted them on sight. He smiles, planting his hand on top of Zsa-Zsa's head. It's somewhat reassuring to see the chipmunk nuzzle into the affectionate touch offered by their master. I suppose I can't fault him for thinking that he could make the lives of the strays better. If he helps facilities meet regulatory standards, I suppose he might have a skewed view of the whole system. He seems to treat Zsa-Zsa well, at least. The pet seems to enjoy his attention, and though they're a little skittish, so is Blue when we meet new people. He might just be the type of person who'll come to share my views. So, your pet? He asks, the question breaking me out of my thoughts. Yes, his name is Blue. He's a common cat, I inform him, just in case he sees him and thinks to call trappers before he checks in with me. We used to live in a small apartment building, so Zsa-Zsa is used to more pets living close by. I hope we'll be able to let them socialize with each other. He explains his reasoning. Chipmunks are not social animals by nature, but you have to force them to develop and utilize those social skills, otherwise they won't be properly adjusted if you ever have to take them out. Judging by the look on Zsa-Zsa's face, it's not the first time they've had play dates arranged for them. And while they don't seem too excited about it, they do seem to be fine with it. I look forward to it, but I promise I'll restrain myself until after you guys have finished unpacking your things, I answer, trying to laugh off the uncomfortable situation. Oh, yes. He chuckles as he looks back. He seems almost embarrassed by the stacks of boxes behind them, still waiting to be unpacked and organized. Seriously, though, it was very nice to meet you, I add honestly as I pass over the Tupperware full of pastries. Enjoy the baked goods, and welcome to the neighborhood. Zsa-Zsa's sniffing at the bag in his hands before he can utter out a quick, "Thank you," and the door closes behind them. As I walk away, I can't help but hope that I'm right about him. He seems to treat his pet well, and despite the way he scolded them, he does seem to have their best interests at heart. Zsa-Zsa could have gotten hurt, or if someone had found them in their yard, they might not have reacted as favorably. He was probably doing that to protect them, to make sure they stay safe. At least, that's what I'd hope. But as I make my way back into my own house, one thought still plays at the back of my mind. Who was the rat? If it wasn't the new neighbor's pet, then it had to be a stray. They don't trust easily, but if I've gotten Thana to like me... Well, like is a strong word. If I've gotten Thana to tolerate me, then it shouldn't be too much trouble to weather the distrust of another stray. I slink into the backyard, trying my best not to make it obvious that I'm looking for someone. There's no one bleeding out, so that's a good sign, though it doesn't look like there's anyone in the backyard anyways. I try to play it off casually, pretending to do some yard work, though there's not much to do in the heart of winter. We probably won't get snow this year, so that means there's not a lot more I can do. The Almacs honk happily in greeting. They seem to be happy in their new home, and I am becoming more and more sure that it's less of a temporary shelter and more of a permanent home. So I'd taken it upon myself to give them names. The Almacs had been taking turns around the nest in the beginning, but now there's one constant in the nest. I had named that one Flea. In the past few days there was a change in Flea's feathers. The mainly white feathers around the Almac's head had grown into an almost ridged crest, and the new tufts of feathers came in a deep blue, just like the feathers of their lower wings. I don't know what it means, but I've been keeping notes. It takes a really long time for an Almac to incubate, apparently, but I'm excited to see a baby. They've also gotten a hell of a lot more territorial, but that's fine. We don't have to come out too much, and when we do, we stay to one side of the yard. It'd be more troublesome if it were happening in spring. But as it is, there's nothing I need to do in the garden daily. The timing worked out surprisingly well. Oh, right. They've been getting territorial. I suppose I shouldn't be worried that the rat isn't back here. Maybe they're just hiding from what they see as scary birds. Hey, I know you're here. It's a lie, but I don't want them to think that I'd be angry with their presence. You can come out, I call, trying to sound disarming. For a minute, I doubt it will work. I doubt it was less threatening to hear someone call out that they could see you in your hidden place in the shadows. But I am too far gone now. If it's one of Thana's, then they know I'm safe. Or if they need help enough that it probably won't matter one way or the other. There's movement at the corner of my vision as I see someone step out of the shadows. It only takes me a moment to turn to face them. It is the rat that I saw earlier, but seeing them more clearly, I realize my mistake. They aren't a stray. They're far too well kept to be a stray. Their clothes are clean. They have nicely tailored winter boots and a fluffy scarf. There's not a trace of muck on them that would suggest they've spent a single night outside, though they do seem to be standing a little unevenly. It takes a second for my brain to catch up with my eyes, as I realize that the familiar doesn't have a right arm. It's not something that happened recently. There's no blood, and they seem well adjusted to the lack of weight. There's no stuttery movement. It's only the physical lack of a limb that draws my eye to it. They bow. It's not full, but it is a sign of respect that I wasn't expecting. After that, though, they seem to go a little bit fidgety. Their tail flicks with an emotion I'm not familiar with, though I have to admit, they seem to have one hell of a poker face. If I didn't see their tail, I would have assumed that they weren't at all bothered by me or my presence. Well, you certainly aren't a stray. What are you doing here? I say the first thing that comes to mind, but when their ear gives a flick, I decide to shift tracks. Got a name? I ask instead, hoping that the easier question might yield a better result. Chuha. My name is Chuha. They answer quickly, though they sound angry. All right. It's a little uncomfortable out here. Would you like to come inside? I offer. I see no reason to amend my current strategy for dealing with strays. I don't... They stutter, staring forward at me like they're lost in thought. It's odd, though I suppose I don't really have anything to compare it to. I've dealt with strays, and I've dealt with familiars, but I haven't really dealt with a familiar without their master present. For some reason, it's just not the same. Does your master know you're here? The question comes out without any direct thought, and when I stop to think about it, I'm not sure if I'm going to regret the answer or not. Yes. They answer with none of the hesitation that they had been displaying earlier. I'm not sure if I should be relieved or concerned. If they're out with permission, then that means that I probably won't get in trouble for interacting with them. But it also leaves me with a lot of questions. Who their master is, for one, that they would let them out to roam, or in this case, track me down. Why would they want their familiar to look into me anyways? I'm nothing special. All right. Well, if you're not in trouble from them, you're not in trouble from me. I try to speak calmly, searching for something else to say. What do I usually do for strays? "I'll fix you something to eat if you want," I offer, grasping at straws. It doesn't put them at ease. In fact, my offer seems to only make them look distinctly uncomfortable. "Or if you need something else," I try again, thinking of anything else I can offer this familiar. "Do you need help getting back to your master?" "No," they answer calmly, even as they shiver in place. It takes them a few more moments, but eventually they do respond. I would like to go inside." "All right, just this way. You don't want to scare the little creatures. They'll bite," I warn, gesturing them forward. They probably don't know what an almac is. At least, Blue and Thana never did. I guess it shouldn't be so surprising. They're immensely rare creatures. There are really only drawn references that exist in very detailed arcane texts. It doesn't take too much more coaxing to get Chua inside. They follow, face blank, but the rest of their body is pretty honest. I can read the anxiety in the line of their body as I close the door behind them, the way they fidget, unsure exactly where to put their hands. They look rattled, though not enough to stop their questions from surfacing. "How did you get Almax to stay on your property?" they blurt, and I have to fight to keep the surprise off my face. I knew they were no stray, but they seem to be a hell of a lot more educated than I thought. If they know what an almac is, that means that they at the very least have access to the types of tomes that would reference such creatures. Either way, I can't have them running around blurting out things like that. Otherwise, I'll have the attention of the Star's damnation coming down on this house. "I don't know what you're talking about." I try to play dumb. "I just have a nice yard. I don't control what comes in or out." "Obviously," I finish, giving them a pointed look that has them ducking their head. I am sorry." They stutter through the syllables like they're a foreign language. Then again, they don't look too used to apologizing. "I'm not angry. I'm just making a point." I try to reassure them, but the tension doesn't leave their body. If anything, it just seems to put them even more on edge. "Yes, sir," they say solemnly, quietly, though through a clenched jaw. It thoroughly shatters any pretense of submissiveness that the lines could conjure. I have to sigh at the familiar's antics. I'm not so sure I can call it hostility, but they are certainly up to something. "Okay. I'm not mad," I remind them. "But why were you in my backyard?" I wave for them to sit in one of the kitchen chairs. "I was watching you." They respond quickly, honestly, though they accept my offer to sit with much more reticence. I wonder if I should put on a little more of a show of treating this familiar like they must expect, but the thought just makes my stomach turn. Watching me. Like, that's not creepy. "Why were you watching me?" I ask, a little more specifically this time. This familiar may be blunt, but I can't sense any lies from them. "I was ordered to check in on you and watch from afar," they answer quickly. "That's concerning." They squirm in the chair that I've offered. They don't seem particularly comfortable, and I can't help but wonder if they're allowed this privilege at home. I toss a couple of spice cakes onto a plate and set it in front of them. It's almost amusing the way their eyes widen at the treat, though they don't pick up the cakes until I've gestured for them to partake. You are well trained. You just don't like to use that training, do you? "Who did you say your master was?" I ask absently, pouring a cup of juice as Chua tucks into their snack. "I didn't," they answer with all the bluntness that I've come to expect. I make myself take a deep breath. Chua is honest. If I'm getting frustrated, that's because I am asking the wrong questions. "Well, can I ask where I can find your master?" I try again. I'd like to know who I'm dealing with. Who would send their familiar over to spy on me? It's not like most of my peers trust their familiars with anything important. Were they hoping I'd get mad at Chua for trespassing? If nothing else, I'd like to escort them home. I want to at least try to sort out this whole thing before I really have to get involved. But Chua's answer leaves that option in the dirt.
"She'll be here,"
they remark blandly. What? I ask reflexively.
"She wanted to talk to you."
They say it like it solves all my problems and answers all my questions. But before I can come up with any sort of counter, there's a knock at the door. The only people who know where I live have school right now, so the knocking is a little more frightening than I believe it should be. Still, I nearly jump out of my skin at the sound.
"They're all talking about you, and arguing. They want to see if you would be good for them,"
Chua continues, as though we haven't been interrupted, before stuffing another one of the tiny round cakes into their mouth. That's not cryptic at all. Well, what do you think? I can't help but let some of my aggravation show through at this familiar's deliberate vagueness. I have no idea who their owner is. I have no idea why they were sent to spy on me, or why they seem so fine with being found out and invited into my home. The only things that I know for certain are that Chua is a familiar, an educated one at that, and that their owner was fighting with someone about me.
"I think you make great cakes,"
they answer, the blandness of their voice only serving to stoke the fires of my exasperation. There's some more insistent knocking at the door, and I realize that whoever's there, I've already made them wait for a terribly long time. If I had 1,000 guesses over 1,000 lifetimes, I don't think I ever could have guessed that Professor Linnell would be at the door, especially given how pissed she looks. I do my best to smile and look generally unassuming. She didn't seem to have a bad opinion of me yesterday, but it seems that ship has since sailed. I wonder what I could have done that pissed her off when I wasn't even at school. "Professor! I wasn't expecting you. Did you need something?" I ask loudly, trying to let the familiar in the other room know that they should probably take this chance to run. The back door should still be unlocked, and given that she never saw them, it is unlikely that they could ever get in trouble. "Kara, we've got some things to discuss," she says curtly, doing nothing to disguise the disdain in her voice. "I thought that the school would call me in when they reached a decision." I try to dance around whatever subject she'd like to breach. I'm not sure that I like the idea of her confronting me here, in my home, where there are no witnesses. "I'm not here on official business," she counters. Well, that's horrifying. "Oh," is as much of an answer as I can summon up for her. There's not much else I can say, is there? "Raton thinks highly of you, though I can't say I'm convinced. But I'm not here to make a judgment call. I'm just here to make sure you don't talk if it turns out that you're not what we're looking for." She says it like it's some kind of accusation, but I have no idea what she's talking about. What the hell does my potions teacher have to do with her opinion of me? I mean, potions has the slightest overlap with herbology, but I didn't even think Brendan and Linnell were friends. Why the hell would they be discussing me, of all people? She brushes past me as she continues forward into my house. I haven't heard the back door close, so I rush to intercede. Linnell is a scary beast when she's displeased, but I don't think I've ever seen her so irate. "Oh, Professor! Where are my manners? Please, let me take your coat. Do you want some tea?" I try to offer casually, hoping that the rush of words comes out more as nervousness from having my professor over at my house without warning than revealing my obvious stalling. "Where is your familiar, anyways? Did you lock him up for giving you trouble the other day?" she asks quietly as she taps her foot and glares into my soul. She's never been interested in Blue before, not since the first time she almost kicked us both out of class. She wasn't one of the teachers that asked about my low constitution familiar, and she was never interested in the rumors that circulated around us. She's waiting for something. As cold as she's being, she's making small talk. She radiates an intensity that makes me sure that she wants nothing more than to punch me in the face and leave. But she's sticking around. She's just tapping her foot impatiently as she tries to peer around me. Blue is out! I try not to flinch at how pathetic that sounds, but technically it isn't a lie. I just don't know how well she'd react to me immediately turning around and giving him the go-ahead to continue teaching the forbidden technique to more people. "Why do you need him?" I counter feebly, but whatever reply would have come from that is mercifully cut off. "Linnell, I swear to every star present in the night sky, you cannot follow directions." My eyes shoot to the door that I've left open as my brain tries to process why Professor Rattan is there in my doorway. Is this what a heart attack feels like? "Brendan, just because I like results more than your tight pants doesn't give you the right to order me around." She turns on him the second he steps into the house. It seems more likely that she'd bite his head off than treat him like a friend who would casually talk about their students together. So I suppose the innocence option is out. "I told you not to freak the kid out and to wait for me before you walked in. Would 2 extra minutes have killed you?" He mumbles into his own hand as Tulla enters and does her level best to just pretend the whole situation around her isn't happening. I have to admit, aside from the angry little twitches of her antennae, she does seem rather serene about the screaming match taking place right in front of the stairs. Well, at least the familiar in my kitchen can definitely hear this, so if nothing else, they'll be safe from this nightmare. "Well, it might have killed the boy's familiar, since he's still not telling me where his cat is," she counters, fixing me with another of her, assumedly patented, pointed stares. Stars. Is that what this is about? I could never hurt Blue. I would... But others don't feel the same. It's commonplace to punish bad familiars, and with the disciplinary council cracking down on me, I guess it would be safe to assume that Blue might be in danger. I'm oddly relieved that someone comes out and checks in cases like these. "Blue is at the school," I rush to say. "He's hanging out with my friend's familiar." I try to put them at ease without really answering anything. I'm not sure how much trouble I would get in if it got out that I was just teaching this new technique to anyone who asked. It probably doesn't matter to them who my friend is. I'm pretty sure Shauna's not even taking herbology. Professor Linnell would have no frame of reference for her anyways. "Oh, how convenient!" she sneers, eyes narrowing as she looks me over again, as though she could discern lies from the flower on my shirt. "Stop being so hostile," Brendan sighs, rolling his eyes like a 12-year-old, and whatever tenuous calm has settled immediately fractures. "I will be as hostile as I want. He may be your pet project, but I have yet to be convinced. Or do I need to remind you what happened the last time you—" She rants, but is cut off by a high-pitched whistle. Tulla stands exactly where she was, in between them and a couple of steps behind, with 2 fingers still in her mouth. It's not like her to draw attention to herself, but she seems to be well practiced in, if not exasperated by, her role as moderator. Her antennae twitch angrily as she points, signing something too fast for me to track before all focus shifts back to me. "Kara, we are terribly sorry for the rude way that we barged into your home and started making accusations." Brendan lowers his head, and though his apology sounds like something a 6-year-old might use to placate their mother, it's still surprising that I managed to get one. "I'm not," Linnell states flatly, crossing her arms and making no move to show herself even the slightest bit apologetic. "Linnell, it's not your call anymore," Brendan says through gritted teeth, but his radiating frustration doesn't seem to have an effect on her. "Well, I'm not convinced. I still don't understand why you're considering him." She raises her voice again, and all I can do is slink as far away as I dare. Brendan doesn't seem to follow my lead as he squares up to her, seemingly prepared for this screaming match. "Because Kara has demonstrated time and time again how different he is from the rest of his peers," he defends. "Oh, I'm sorry. Being weird isn't really an amazing criteria, Brendan. She laughs, eyes narrowing, as if daring him to come up with a better argument. I cringe. I don't know exactly what they're fighting over, but it seems to pretty clearly involve me. I'm not exactly sure what being weird qualifies me for, but given how Linnell's acting, I have to assume the stakes are a little higher than their support for a grant proposal. Look, I'm not having this argument with you right now. You said that you would come with me to talk this out with him, Brendan says, his tone a hair's breadth away from whining. I am just making sure you aren't making another mistake, Linnell counters, his tone not softening hers in the slightest. I'm just making sure that he knows how to keep his mouth shut. She smiles sweetly up at me, and I feel myself break out into a cold sweat. There are 2 teachers, 2 high-ranking mages, fighting in my home. I should be scared. Hell, I should be running, hoping that I'll escape whatever blast this results in. But something keeps me rooted to the floor. I suppose Esma would be mad if I blew up her house, even if she doesn't use it all that much anymore. I speak, trying to ignore the way my stomach drops to the floor as both their heated gazes shift to me. Would you guys like some tea? I offer. You know, I would love some. Brendan smiles, and I can practically see the way he wants to stick out his tongue at her. It's the only thing that could make this any more juvenile. Unlike someone, I know how to enjoy things. Right, Tula? He says smugly. I'm not expecting a response from the notoriously silent familiar, but when I look over to where she was standing, my heart freezes in my chest. She isn't behind her master, or Linnell, or anywhere in the front entryway. The bug has vanished. Oh, stars, I mumble. Brendan seems to be quick on the uptake, at least, immediately spinning around to look for his familiar. Where's Tula? Linnell voices the question on all our minds when there's a clattering in the kitchen. We all rush into the kitchen, and I have a momentary heart attack when I see that the rat is still there. But at least Tula seems to be enjoying the company. There's no aggressive action between the 2 familiars. Chua's sharing their treats with Tula. It's an odd gesture for 2 familiars that have never met before, but Tula doesn't seem to think so. She just takes the offered pastries and idly nibbles on the sides. Well, what do we have here? Brendan questions, his voice amused as he takes in the scene before him. I have to admit, the presence of a new familiar in my home, when Blue is nowhere to be found, does seem to support Linnell's accusations. I can see how this looks from the outside. Blue got me in trouble, and just like any other spoiled mage, I threw out last semester's model in favor of something a little less troublesome. Oh, I just found this guy outside. Their name is... I try to say, but Linnell cuts me off before I can defend myself. Chua! What the hell? I told you he was dangerous. I said not to let him so much as see you, not to stop in and have tea with him, she shouts. Though the familiar's ear flicks at the name, the only other sign of recognition they give is a roll of their eyes as they shove the last of their pastry into their mouth. Chua's yours? The question is out of my mouth before I realize I've decided to ask it. It's obvious, the more I think about it, but the idea still makes my stomach turn. Why did Linnell have her familiar spying on me? What were Brendan and Linnell planning with me that would get Chua involved? And why the hell is Brandon laughing? Oh, yes, what a terrible keeper. He finds a familiar trespassing on his grounds and invites them in for snacks at the table. Truly, a diabolical figure. Brendan laughs. Don't worry about it, Kara. She's always been a little bit of a daredevil. Never listens to Linnell's warnings, anyways. Whatever joke he's in on, I don't get it. And judging by the way Linnell looks ready to stab me, she doesn't seem to get it either. You treat Blue the same way all the others do, she accuses.
You see him as nothing more than a tool. You're using that torturer's guide they call a training book like it's indisputable fact. And how would you know how I treat Blue? I shoot back. I don't like her accusation, but I'm even more concerned about how hung up she is on it. I'm supposed to be using the book, right? That's the framework that everyone is supposed to be working off of. If anything, I should be getting in trouble for how far I've deviated. I asked him, she replies triumphantly, as though she's the pioneer for a new path of study. Is that how Blue feels? That I use him as a tool? But I haven't used the training book. From the first day, I don't even know where it is anymore. I meant to throw it away, but I don't remember doing it. Either way, I certainly haven't been doing anything by the book.
Oh, well, there's your problem, Linnell. Brendan laughs. Blue's never going to say anything that might reflect badly on Kara. He probably thought he was giving you the answers you wanted. Linnell looks as though she's going to contest that, but whatever fire has been fueling her seems to have gone out. Why exactly did you guys come here? I ask the 4 people that I was not planning to have over. Well, we wanted to formally introduce ourselves. Brendan smiles, nudging Linnell forward. She looks so different when she looks at me without contempt that I'm actually taken aback. Not as your teachers, but as members of something a little more radical.